He waves to the visitors through the thick glass of the sanctuary, exactly as his human caretakers taught him. Broad palm raised, eyes narrowed in what they call his learned smile. The crowd hums with soft applause. Cell phones flash like falling stars. For an instant, the illusion holds. A gorilla who seems to understand the world of men. His name is Kibo, a 15-year-old silverback who has never seen another gorilla in his life. Born in the shadows of the illegal exotic animal trade deep in the Congo, he was rescued during a raid on a rusted shipping container bound for a private zoo in Europe. Malnourished, alone. No mother, no siblings, only the cold corrugated walls and the distant growl of truck engines. He was barely 2 months old when he arrived at the Kinshasa Jungle Wildlife Sanctuary, still clutching a torn blanket as if it were his mother's fur. Now, almost 2 decades later, Kibo is the star of the center. He mimics human gestures with uncanny precision, communicates using basic sign language, food, play, friend, and understands dozens of simple commands. He's gentle, expressive, even playful with the volunteers who visit him, traits that have earned him magazine covers in the Congolese press and donations from the WWF in 2025. When deforestation was devouring 12,000 hectares a month in Central Africa. But behind that glass, he is utterly alone. He eats in silence, chewing fresh leaves with slow, deliberate movements. He sleeps curled in the corner of his enclosure, back pressed against the cold wall. At night, he hums softly to himself, a low, rhythmic vibration no one ever taught him. Some caretakers say it's a repressed instinct, an echo of the forest pulsing in his blood. Others, like Miguel, his ranger and guardian, call it the call of the wild, a forgotten song that rises when moonlight filters through the bars, whispering to him that beyond the glass lies a world of roars he has never known. And in that loneliness, fate was already weaving its thread toward a reunion that would shatter barriers and unite the human and the wild in a language only the jungle could understand. The sun streamed through the canopy like threads of lost gold, illuminating a clearing where the human and the wild would touch for the first time. Kibo, the silverback raised from infancy in a human sanctuary on the outskirts of Kinshasa, watched the horizon with eyes filled with curiosity and an inexplicable emptiness. His black fur glistened with morning dew, but his movements were clumsy, almost graceful. A hand raised as if asking permission, a tilt of the head learned from the caretakers who had rocked him in place of his lost mother. Kibo didn't roar like the gorillas in the videos they showed him. Instead, he made soft, whispering sounds and used signs in American Sign Language, a fragile bridge between two worlds. Ranger Miguel, a 45-year-old man whose skin was tanned and scarred from decades of patrolling the Congo, guided him gently with a loose rope, his olive-green uniform stained with mud and sweat. "Easy, Kibo. This is your home now," Miguel murmured, his voice rough with emotion. In 2025, as deforestation consumed 12,000 hectares a month across Central Africa, programs like this one tried to reintroduce orphaned gorillas like Kibo, rescued from traffickers who sold them as exotic pets. Miguel carried the weight of that mission on his shoulders. Kibo was more than a charge. He was his adopted son, the infant he had fed from a bottle, the creature he'd taught to speak with his hands. But today, on this reintegration expedition, destiny was about to script an encounter neither of them could have imagined. Suddenly, a deep roar rolled through the trees, a sound so primal it made the ground tremble like an ancient drum. Kibo froze, his pupils widening, and for the first time in his life a chill of recognition ran down his spine. Miguel raised his hands, palms open. The universal sign of peace. "It's one of yours, my friend. Listen." The roar was not a threat. It was a call, an echo of something buried deep within Kibo's soul. Through the dappled light, a massive figure emerged from the thickets. Bantu, a 25-year-old silverback, leader of a hidden troop deep within the Congo's heart. His black-silver fur was marked by scars from battles with leopards and humans alike. His dark, fierce eyes locked on Kibo's with a mix of suspicion and fascination. Bantu beat his chest with fists like thunder, a roar filling the clearing, a warning to the intruder. But Kibo didn't run. He raised his hands in a gesture he had learned from humans. Friend, fingers crossed in peace. Bantu tensed, his massive chest heaving, but something in that gesture stopped him. It was the image of the impossible. A civilized gorilla facing his wild essence under the gaze of a man who had crossed invisible borders. Miguel held his breath, knowing one wrong move could shatter nature's fragile thread, and so began a story the jungle would whisper for generations. A reunion that would erase the line between the tamed and the free. Kibo felt a pull in his chest, as if a buried memory was rising. Nights in the sanctuary watching blurry videos of gorillas roaring in freedom, his hands imitating movements he'd never lived. Now, before Bantu, that emptiness filled with rhythm, a heartbeat that led him home. The Congo forest in October 2025 was a living tapestry of contradictions. Rivers swelled from climate change-driven rains, dragging century-old logs downstream while illegal miners cut into the earth for coltan, leaving red mud scars. Miguel had spent 20 years protecting these sacred places. Ever since an orphaned gorilla, Kibo's father, had once saved his life during a mine collapse. Now, with sanctuary funding dwindling and WWF donations barely covering expenses, Miguel led these reintegration missions, returning captive-raised gorillas to the wild to remember who they were. Kibo was one of the program's first successes. Rescued at 6 months from a black market stall in Brazzaville, where he'd been sold for $8,000 as a pet, Miguel had raised him on formula and sign language lessons. "Look, Kibo." "Mother," Miguel would sign with trembling hands as the baby mimicked him, his chubby fingers clumsy but eager. Kibo grew up understanding human words. Food, play, danger, but he never roared. Instead, he spoke through gestures, a hybrid that made him unique and utterly alone. At the sanctuary, he played with child volunteers, climbing wooden structures shaped like trees, yet his eyes always searched the horizon as if sensing a missing part of himself. Miguel knew it. Kibo needed a troop, his true kin. He remembered the nights when Kibo curled up beside him, whining softly instead of roaring, asking with his hands, "Where family?" Miguel would reply soon, but that soon had come. Their expedition began at dawn, Kibo walking upright like a human, his leash loose, a symbol of tentative freedom. They crossed murmuring streams and avoided hunters, traps, nets camouflaged, with poisoned fruit bait, grim reminders that 70% of mountain gorillas were critically endangered. According to the 2025 IUCN report, Miguel carried a drone in his backpack for monitoring and a waterproof notebook for field notes. Day 1. Kibo responds to birdsong, but not to recorded roars. Everything changed in that clearing. Bantu wasn't an ordinary gorilla. Leader of 12, he'd lost his mate to poachers 2 years earlier, and his first roar was a lament disguised as defense. But when he saw Kibo, something in that peaceful hand gesture disarmed him. Bantu approached slowly, sniffing the air heavy with human scents on Kibo's fur. Soap, powdered milk, captivity. Kibo responded with another sign. Family, fists touching his chest. Bantu's low rumble vibrated through the ground. A question more than a threat. Miguel stayed back, heart pounding. "Don't interfere. Let them speak." Then the rest of the troop emerged, females clutching infants, curious eyes fixed on the stranger. One baby, fur soft and eyes wide, tumbled forward playfully toward Kibo. Kibo crouched, extended a hand. Play. The baby touched it. That single touch silenced Bantu's roar. It was the first bridge, the raised among humans teaching signs, the wild answering with instinct. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The wind whispered secrets older than language. Miguel remembered his own loss, his wife killed on patrol, and how Kibo had filled that void with his innocent signs. Family, the gorilla would say, and Miguel would cry silently. Now, watching Kibo connect, he felt bittersweet closure. But the peace shattered with a distant crack. Human footsteps, harsh voices, hunters armed with rifles and machetes, drawn by rumors of tame gorillas, easy prey. Miguel tensed. Kibo sensed danger, stepping between the baby and the sound, a protective gesture learned from humans. Bantu roared, a call to arms, but Kibo lifted his hands in the sign for danger. Bantu mimicked him instinctively, tapping his chest. In that instant, reunion became alliance, two worlds colliding against a shared threat. The hunters weren't amateurs. They were an organized syndicate funded by the $200 million a year black market in exotic pets. They'd lost 3 gorillas the week before to rangers like Miguel, and they were hungry for revenge. There, the tame one, hissed the scar-faced leader, raising his rifle. Kibo, the baby still clinging to his chest, signed, "Run." But Bantu, confused by the gesture, hesitated. A bullet whizzed past, grazing a female's fur. Chaos erupted. Panicked roars, crying infants, the troop scattering. Miguel fired a flare into the sky to startle the attackers, but the men pressed forward, machetes cutting vines. In a flash of instinct, Kibo roared, for the first time. It was a hybrid sound, guttural yet shaped by human rhythm, a roar that spoke danger. Bantu responded, pounding his chest, rallying the troop toward the river. The chase tore through treacherous roots and whipping vines, the air thick with fear and gunpowder. Miguel radioed the sanctuary. "Intruders, 200 meters north, troop in danger." But time was running out. The hunters, 4 men in mud-caked boots, rifles shaking, spotted Kibo's upright stance. "Look, a tame gorilla." One sneered. Bantu swelled, roaring thunder, his silver chest a living shield. The troop huddled, mothers shielding babies with their bodies. Kibo, panicking, signed bad men, fingers curling like claws, then run. Pointing toward a hidden path, Bantu stared, confused but intrigued, then imitated the claw sign, grunting a question. "What is this?" The baby rolled again toward Kibo, clinging to his leg. Kibo lifted her gently, cradling her to his chest, as he had once seen Miguel cradle wounded animals. That single act broke something inside Bantu. The silverback approached, sniffed the baby safe in Kibo's arms, and grunted low. Not threat, but acceptance. Miguel seized the moment, signaling to Kibo, "Lead them to the river." Kibo translated the gesture, hands in water. Then safe. Bantu caught on, roaring commands to the troop. They followed the path Kibo indicated, elevated roots avoiding the hunters' traps. The men burst into the clearing, rifles raised, but the troop was already vanishing into the foliage. Kibo in the center, a living bridge. A shot cracked, the bullet grazing Miguel's arm. He hit the ground, gasping. "Kibo!" he shouted. The gorilla turned, roaring again, half human, half wild, warning Bantu of a pit trap ahead. Bantu leaped, saving his mate, then looked back at Kibo, respect glowing in his eyes. The hunters cursed, smoke and sweat mingling with the forest air, but the troop was gone, a river of black fur slipping through the green maze. Miguel followed, radio in hand calling for reinforcements. The pulse of the jungle throbbed around them, every step a beat, every roar a verse in the song of survival. For the first time, Kibo felt his own roar. Not learned, but born. Bantu glanced sideways at him, grunting softly. "Well done, brother." Miguel, bleeding and breathless, thought of his wife. "If you could see this, my love, you'd know that bonds go beyond words." The hunters reloaded. The troop zigzagged through the roots. Kibo signed left for a detour. Bantu followed. Another shot grazed Miguel's shoulder, but he didn't stop. "Stay together," he yelled. Kibo roared in reply, an echo uniting the group. The forest answered, howler monkeys screaming alarm, birds exploding into flight. The hunters tripped, swore, fell, while the troop melted into the labyrinth of green. At last, the chase ended. The Congo River murmured victory. The troop emerged on a hidden shore, ferns and crystal water glowing under the setting sun. Miguel collapsed by a trunk, radio crackling with news. Reinforcements en route. Hunters trapped. But his eyes were on Kibo, who was roaring with the troop for the first time. A deep, resonant sound rippling through the water like belonging. Bantu, exhausted but proud, struck the ground, not in fury but in ceremony. Water sprayed like jewels. The baby in Kibo's arms touched his cheek with tiny hands, a gesture of instinctive gratitude. Her mother approached, sniffed him curiously, and gave a low hum. "Thank you." Kibo signed back family. Fists to chest. Bantu mimicked him, his massive hands clumsy but sincere. And in that moment, the secret was revealed. Kibo wasn't just a bridge. He was a translator. His human signs blended with Bantu's roars, forming a hybrid language, signs for danger, modulated growls for ally. Miguel, silent witness, scribbled notes in his waterproof journal, sign plus roar, hue, group, alert. It was a discovery that could save lives. In 2025, as poachers killed 500 gorillas annually according to the Jane Goodall Institute, this hybrid language could warn entire troops before traps closed. Bantu touched his muzzle to Kibo's shoulder, a brother's gesture that made Kibo tremble, tears glistening in his eyes. The troop gathered around, mothers sharing fruit, infants climbing, and Kibo at the center teaching signs. Food for banana, play for rolling. Bantu watched, mimicking softly, his silver chest rising and falling in rhythm. Miguel sat on the edge, overwhelmed by the sacredness of it all. He, the man who had civilized Kibo, now saw that this exile had become salvation. He remembered the night he rescued the baby, wrapped in a blood-stained blanket, whispering, "You're safe now." Now. Kibo rocked Bantu's infant, a perfect echo. The forest seemed to celebrate. Birds singing, rivers humming, wind scattering seeds of renewal. Miguel bandaged his arm, pain reminding him of the cost, but his mind burned with hope. "This changes everything," he murmured. "WWF will fund it. Drones could teach signs to orphans. Troops could alert each other before miners strike." Bantu seemed to understand, grunting softly, an invitation for Miguel to join. The ranger approached slowly, offering his open hand. Bantu sniffed it, then grunted approval. The baby climbed onto Miguel's lap, sniffing him curiously, making him laugh, tears mixing with river water. Family. Kibo signed it, and everyone, humans and gorillas alike, touched their chests in unison. As night fell, vast and star-filled, Bantu gathered the troop, leading them to a hidden grove where roots formed natural domes. Kibo followed, teaching nest with cupped hands. Miguel filmed everything with the drone, gestures that could revolutionize conservation. At dawn, the sun rose like a promise. Bantu extended his massive hand toward Miguel, a gesture learned from Kibo, eyes gleaming with wordless gratitude. The troop departed, Kibo among them, their twin roars sealing the bond forever. Miguel returned to the sanctuary with the map of signs in hand, ready to transform conservation protocols, integrating the hybrid language into anti-poaching alerts and climate tracking. That day, beneath the eternal canopy, a reunion united forest and man. The wounded yet resilient Congo kept the secret in its green veins, an invisible bond roaring with hope against human darkness. Months later, the hybrid language became an official WWF protocol. Drones taught signs to orphaned troops, reducing captures by 35% in Congo field tests. Miguel, now a coordinator, shared videos at conferences, not as fable, but as living legacy. Kibo and Bantu, seen in camera trap footage, led an expanded troop, the raised teaching the wild to sign, the wild returning instinct to the raised. Newborns mimicked signs, roars modulated to warn of distant miners, Miguel visited, watching Kibo with his own offspring, signing father with pride. "We did it," he whispered, and the echo of that first eternal roar lived on in his chest.